The Nigerian government's plan to fully remove fuel subsidies mid-next year is definitely one of the tough decisions to be taken by the Muhammadu Buhari administration as the government struggles to fix the country's economy. It is a move that has been on the table for years, as previous governments did not muster the political will to completely remove the fuel subsidy. Finance Minister Zainab Ahmed says the government will do so fully in June 2022. To mitigate the effect of the removal on the standard of living of the people, the government will grant transport support to about 30 to 40 million Nigerians who make up the poorest population in the country.
Working with partners on measures to cushion potential negative impact of the removal of the subsidies on the most vulnerable at the bottom of the pyramid, at least 40% of the population. One of such measures will be to institute a monthly transport subsidy in the form of cash transfer of 5,000 naira to between 30 to 40 million deserving Nigerians. And this we're aiming to do using digital platforms, that there will be no physical cash transfers in this instance.
How do we raise this money to pay these 40 million Nigerians? Because I know that even at the subsidy or revenue being raised, are money that are coming in from this so-called oil and other sources of revenue to the federal government. So how do we? This is not provided for already in the budget as we have. We don't have anywhere in the budget where 40 million Nigeria at 5,000 naira equals this amount of about 2.4 trillion contained in that budget.
Joe Ajaero, the Deputy President of the Nigerian Labour Congress, is now joining us live from Abuja to contribute to the discussion. Joe Ajaero, thank you very much for joining us. Well, we read in the papers, we've seen the statement by the Nigerian Labour Congress opposing the plan by the Nigerian government to deregulate the downstream sector. Well, the big takeaway for me is Nigerian Labour Congress saying, oh, this is import-driven, this is in response to the urgings of the neoliberal institutions, the Bretton Woods institutions. What exactly is the position of Labour, considering the fact that the federal government is saying that this is now a matter of law within the purview of the Petroleum Industry Act?
Well, thank you very much. The Nigerian Labour Congress, our statement is not ambiguous, and it's very clear. Unambiguous in the sense that each time the federal government wants to increase fuel price, they will call it a subsidy removal. You will recall that in May 2016, federal government came up with the same announcement that it has removed subsidy and announced a price increase of 145 naira per liter. You know, events after that moment showed that it was just a price increase. It wasn't subsidy removal. And then on and on and on. But the story they are coming up with now, when you put it side by side with a World Bank position on the 40% of the poorest of the poor in Nigeria, shows that it is not balancing up. According to the World Bank, they said about 3% of the poorest of the poor, about 40% of the poorest of the poor consume about 3% of PMS products. And the federal government was talking of 40 million Nigerians. And if you look at 40% of 200 million people, you are going to get about 80 million people. And then to discuss that, you are going to give them 5,000 naira every month because you are trying to run away from 1.8 trillion subsidy. It doesn't make sense. So the NLC was clear about it, that this is not going to work, and the whole indices point to the fact that it's going to create inflation. And if you are talking of creating inflation, you know, you are still going to look at the issue of revenue, the issue of increase in wages, and then the cost of living index, foodstuff, transportation, everything will skyrocket. And that's not how to run an economy. You know, we'll be next to Greece and other countries if that eventually happens. And that this dictate coming from the World Bank is unacceptable to us. So that's the position of the NLC, clear.
Yeah, but isn't it the case that at some point the Nigerian Labour Congress was engaged in some kind of dialogue with the Nigerian government on the issue of subsidies in the electricity sector, in the oil and gas sector? Where are we with that conversation? Are you saying that Labour was not consulted at all?
Why? No, that was why Labour said that this is more or less a monologue. You know, we were meeting at a stage we adjourned Senate die, and the federal government didn't get back to Labour again just to announce this issue of 5,000 they want to give to people, and then removal of the so-called subsidy. Now, with that, you know that there's already a breakdown in talk, because we are not on the same table on this. So, and we have said it clearly that we are going to resist this, not just Labour, but ordinary Nigerians that this thing is going to impact negatively on. So that's the situation. We are not with them. We have not concluded talks either on electricity tariff or PMS. You know, up to now, we are joined to brief our principals, and up to now we have not convened, only for them to just announce, you know, that they are going to remove subsidy, whatever that means.
Well, but you recall that the Minister of Budget, of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, when she was speaking at that World Bank Development Update event, also pointed out that the Nigerian government is optimistic that by the time the subsidy will be removed, at least the 4 refineries belonging to the federal government will be completed, they will be on stream, and that at least 3 private refineries, including the Dangote 650,000 barrels per day refinery, will also have come on stream. And with all of that, you know, there shouldn't be any need to worry. What do you say to that?
Well, I don't think that he's disclosing the whole fact. You don't put you don't say when you remove it, all those ones will come on stream. You know, it doesn't fly. If the woman was arguing that if these things come on stream, then gradually we remove the subsidy, because it will not impact on the people. And this issue of refineries, repairing refineries that are down since 2015 up to now, is not working. It has not worked. So I think they should find new things to tell us. Not that we'll remove it and then these ones will come on stream. It doesn't add up, you know. And then Nigeria is the only country, the only oil-producing country that is not refining. And refining is not rocket science. So I think if they are really sincere, they should equally allow those refineries to come on stream before the so-called removal of subsidy. I think you can't equally continue to subsidize consumption. Let them subsidize production. So if they are ready to subsidize production, by now those refineries should have started work. Or the modular refineries, you know, here and there. I don't think there is any conscious master plan on this for now, except dependent that some private refineries will come on stream. No country runs on that assumption.
Okay, but let's dial back a little bit. I mean, the whole point about this deregulation of the downstream sector is based on the principle that the current regime that we have is not sustainable, because it promotes inefficiency, it promotes leakages, and it favors the rich at the expense of the poor. And government is saying that, look, we can't sustain this regime. We just must, you know, take the hard, make the hard choice. Do you agree with that principle? And if you do, what is Labour offering as an alternative, as a better way in the reckoning of Labour that government can go about this? Or do you even reject the very principle of it?
I really don't understand. I don't even understand the very regime he's talking of. The same regime created by government to import finished products from other countries, you know, and then they are saying it's not sustainable. You know, you don't create a regime and say it's not sustainable and then try to punish people. When you talk of the rich, probably those who are involved in importation of PMS products, you know, because the rich, you know, as we talk now, if you connect it to electricity supply, you discover where they came out with band A, band B, band C. The rich are also getting 16 hours and above, 20 hours and above. The poor, as of today, are the people that buy 4 liters, 5 liters of petrol, since there's no, of PMS, since there's no regular supply of electricity everywhere. So the whole thing is still bouncing back on the poor. So there's no way the poor will not be the people at the receiving end in what is happening now. But if you talk of maybe the 1% or 2% who are involved in import and their allies, you know, those are the people that are benefiting. But generally, you know, the multiply effect, the transport, you know, fare, all of it, the inflation in the market, the effect is on the poor masses, and it has continued to be on the poor masses.
Well, the federal government, there are some people, you know, who say that the federal government has shown good faith by offering 5,000 naira transport fare for the population of about 30 to 40 million poor and vulnerable Nigerians, about 7 million households covered by that figure, and that in itself is a demonstration of good faith. What is Labour's objection? Is it that the number is not high enough? Because I heard you earlier on talking about 80 million. Or is it that the amount is not high enough? If government were to increase the amount and probably also expand the net of poor and vulnerable households, would that satisfy your expectations? And then encourage organized labor to support the federal government of Nigeria?
Well, already there is the issue of trust gap between the government and the governed is already wide. You know, you don't talk of 5,000 per maybe 40% of Nigerians that are vulnerable, and we are saying that 40% of Nigerians that are vulnerable will give you about 80 million people. We're equally saying that you want to save 1.something trillion in the name of subsidy, and then you introduce almost 4 trillion, you know, to pay the vulnerable. Now, it doesn't add up. Unless there's something else, you know, they are telling us. If you equally look back during the COVID-19 era, and when they say they were transferring some money, you know, some palliative to Nigerians, many people have been challenging how many people received that money, who received that money. You can't remove, you know, a subsidy of 1.8 trillion, and then you bring another subsidy or palliative to the so-called poor of almost, you know, 8 trillion or 4 trillion. You can see that it is not flowing. Besides that, there's no provision for the 5,000 payment in the 2022 budget. So we have checked it left and right. We don't seem to understand, you know, the essence of 5,000 and how they want to sustain it. Okay,
but you know, the last time you were on this program, I was always talking about alternative options. What alternatives is the Nigerian Labour Congress proposing to the government of Nigeria? And is the NLC making any effort to reach out to the government for dialogue on this particular subject? Instead of the reports we saw in the papers yesterday, the threat by Nigerian Labour Congress that it will shut down Nigeria should the federal government go ahead with this proposal.
Well, like I said earlier, the issue of monologue is what the government followed. Because, like you equally said earlier, we were discussing, there was a case of dialogue trying to find a peaceful solution to this. Our position has been clear, very clear. There's nobody who doesn't understand the position of Labour, that the refineries must work, just like every other oil-producing country. And we say that if our refineries are working, there are almost 7 billion naira spent daily, to carry finished petroleum products imported into Lagos Airport, Apapa Port, to other parts of the country will be saved. We don't need to do that. And if you watch, it is mainly logistics, that is affecting, what they are bringing in. You carry up your crude product, export it, and import finished product, and the cost of transporting them, from statistics is over 7 billion daily. We are saying that these refineries that we have in Nigeria should work. We can equally have other modular refineries. There was one constructed in Owerri recently, but it's not producing PMS. So the essence is that if the refineries work, we are going to preserve jobs of our members who work of Nigerians who work in Nupeng and Pengasen, and then we'll be having these products without spending, shipping, landing costs, logistics, and there won't have any problem, on the cost, adding all those costs. And if you remove all these costs, you see that the price of PMS will come down drastically.
Well,
that's the position of NLC. Yes,
but is NLC ready for the resumption of dialogue?
Well, anytime, any day, Labour has not shied away from dialogue, and we'll be ready to, because we have alternative, position to provide and to present.
Well, one other argument that people put forward is that diesel is already deregulated, kerosene is deregulated. The only item that has not yet been really deregulated in the downstream sector is petrol. So why should petrol be different? Even the cost of gas has gone up, and the people are more or less living with it. So why this obsession with the pump price of PMS?
Deregulation doesn't mean price increase. It appears that each time the federal government is talking of deregulation or withdrawal of subsidy, they are the same people that announce prices. You can't increase prices of products in a deregulated market. We are made to understand that they will be subject to market forces, that market forces will determine, the prices of such products. And then you don't just go ahead and say it is going to cost this amount. No. We are very clear about this. But you can't equally deregulate an import in a sector that is import-driven. What are you deregulating? Something that you are importing. If the refineries are working and we are producing it here, then prices you can talk of price modulation or whatever. But now, what that you imported is like the price is known. Those people importing it will equally make profit, and there will be margin that they are going to make out of it.
Well, is it not surprising that while, organized labor is saying that what government wants to do is unacceptable, that in fact oil marketers and other stakeholders within that sector of the oil and gas industry, they are supporting government. I've seen Moman, I've seen Napeman, issuing statements saying that they are solidly behind the federal government. And these are also members of the Nigerian Labour Congress. Is there something that those stakeholders know that is not yet known to the leadership of organized labor?
Well, I think there's a very big difference between marketers and producers. Marketers, like as at now, maybe they have increased the price they are giving them at the depots. Now, if they give them at 160 naira per liter in the depot, they will increase it to 200 or 300. They will still make their profit. Imagine. They are not actually the producers. They are equally like, if I get it at this price, I will add my own. So nothing is affecting them to that extent, and they will not suffer any loss. It's the end user, the workers that are buying the products that are the receiving end. If you like, sell it to them at the depot at 500 naira per liter, they will sell it at 1,000 per liter. They are not losing anything. In fact, that is the period that they make more profit. And it's all about, to them, it's all about profit maximization. They don't have this patriotic zeal and commitment that the NLC are having. if you watch, even the real workers in those sectors, I'm not talking of the employers or the traders in the sector, the Nupeng and Pengasin, you know, more or less align with the Nigerian Labour Congress, align with Nigerians. You know, so I think it's clear about it between the people who are businessmen in the sector and the workers whose wages have not increased. There's no way you increase the pump price of petroleum products to 300 naira, and then you expect the worker to receive 30,000 naira minimum wage. So the consequences will be so daring and damning.
Well, Mr. Joe Ajaero, Deputy President of the Nigerian Labour Congress, we would like to thank you very much for joining us. And we hope that both organized labor and the federal government of Nigeria will perhaps, you know, look for an opportunity to discuss these issues beyond the, you know, threats that we see in the front pages of newspapers. Thank you very much, Mr. Joe Ajaero, for